Jim, what an honor it is to have you join this Voices of Impact series. As you know, we just started it with the idea of having a series with funds and then a series with allocators. And what a privilege it is to have you join us. So glad that we could do this together, Jim.
Thank you, Terry. I'm happy to be part of this and love what you're doing.
Well, I think I wanted to start at the top. There's so many things I want to get into: transactions, allocations, the ecosystem. Maybe we'll move from micro to macro. But I actually wanted to start on a more profound note, Jim. We've become very good friends, and I happen to know how important your faith is to you. And if we think of Sir Ronald Cohen as the father of impact investing, you're the patron saint or the godfather. I don't know which you'd rather be. If it's not too personal, could you share with our guests the importance of your faith in the way that you've conducted your career?
Well, I think that we all want to be involved in a good way to help. I think obviously we have our careers, we have the businesses that we're involved in, but I think there is kind of a common interest that that we'd like to, help mankind in ways that we can do that. And, in our faith, we're taught to be anxiously engaged for a good cause to bring to pass much righteousness and good in the world in which we live. So that's kind of an underpinning to at least where I'm coming from. And if I can do that in a way that is helping me to either create or build wealth or help others do the same, I'm really able to essentially do two things at the same time, essentially doing good while doing well.
And you clearly done that. I was on a call today with a friend of mine in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and he was saying that he wants to make a bunch of money first and then do good things with it. And I say, well, I have a friend who's going about it a little bit of a different way. He's decided not to separate those two ventures. And I know the Sorenson Impact Foundation was started in 2012, and a number of PRIs, MRIs. But by 2020, you decided with Krista to be all in on impact. You decided to be 100% in and mission aligned. Could you just describe that journey, Jim, to us as briefly as you can, and what some of the implications of that were?
Yeah, and really the underpinnings of the journey could go on much earlier for me, Terry. I was a serial entrepreneur, and really I loved finding interesting business opportunities, even ideas of my own, investing in them, and then growing the businesses to a point where they'd reached a level of success that I could sell them and move on to the next thing. And it was really in that process that I came across a business that we'd invested in the technology for a number of years. And it was video compression technology, very early days of the internet. And we had, I think, state-of-the-art technology, and we're focused on the mass market. And the dot-com bubble burst. And you know what that was like, Terry. We needed investment in the company. We couldn't find investors. We were burning a lot of money, and I had to make a decision to close it or do something else. And a deaf brother-in-law came to me at that juncture and basically pointed out a new service that was being trialed for the deaf that ultimately ended up making a huge impact, anecdotally enabling them to be about 4 times more employable because they could communicate with the hearing in real time over the internet through a remote sign language interpreter in real time. And that's what our technology did. Amazing success story in terms of, in less than 3 years, essentially a unicorn. There weren't many unicorns back in those days, Terry, particularly in the state of Utah. And I was being referred to as the Alexander Graham Bell of the deaf.
Amazing.
So whether that was deserved or not, that's what it meant to them. And at a stage in my life when I wanted to start giving back, I realized that you could address a social problem or benefit a society in a more scalable, self-sustaining way through a business. And that's what really put me on the path then to looking for these kind of opportunities and ultimately, building a foundation around this premise of impact investing, doing what I've done with the Sorenson Impact Institute for students, and building an advisory around the same asset management group here now, and the foundation. And the foundation, we were very active in making program-related investments. Terry, now these are considered grants from an IRS standpoint,
Yeah,
in that they're
I'd like you to
purpose-first.
even walk us through that a little bit, Jim, because I wanted you to talk about
Yeah,
the PRI, MRI flywheel.
right. So I discovered this very early on, that you could make a program-related investment, which by design, Terry, was concessionary, needed to be concessionary. By the IRS, it couldn't be, the main purpose couldn't be to make money. But you could make money so long as that wasn't the primary purpose. And so that meant that we were either concessionary by terms or by risk, either coming in, and taking lower terms than market rate investors, or funding companies that were so early, maybe had a very disruptive, impact model, but were so early that they couldn't find capital to help get them off the ground. And so we would make these program-related investments, and we were doing that, with about 60% of our grant-making budget. The other 40% were in grants. So 60%, Terry, is a lot.
That's a
when
lot.
you consider that few really private foundations are making program-related investments.
Right,
I mean,
right.
relatively small percentage of, and we were doing it quite a bit. But again, with this eye towards scalability, ultimately investing in something that really takes off and grows much beyond a small area that a typical nonprofit would be, maybe scale to another country or another state. Or, instead of 10,000 reaching 100,000 or 1,000,000 people in terms of what they did. That's what really attracted us. Catalytic philanthropy. And what that is where the impact is much greater than the donation.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're doing that. And along about 2017, we felt that we were at a stage, and the market was at a stage at this point, that we could start moving some of the corpus of the foundation. Now, Terry, the corpus of the foundation, particularly if it's perpetual, just to beat inflation,
and the
and you're
payout.
giving away 5%, you got to be, 8% on average every year. That's not bad in terms of, the bogey that you've got to reach, and you want to obviously do better than that. So we made the decision and found, our wealth manager found an experienced, manager to bring in to their company, someone that was very experienced in doing the kind of research and asset management selection, all of the things that you typically do for a client, but not only on the financial side, but on the impact side. And it took us about 3 years, Terry. So by 2020, the remaining 95% now, that's 100% of the foundation's assets were being invested for impact. And, we were so excited about that, and we were, and still are, beating the benchmarks that we measure, in terms of returns.
That's a 60-40 benchmark, Jim? Is it about a 60-40 benchmark?
Yeah, about a 60-40 benchmark. But this was deployed across asset classes, Terry, in a very, what I would say, conventional, policy statement, investment policy statement, and, incorporating, all of the diversification, as well as the different types of private and public, equity investments. Anyway, long story short, we hired away this team and brought them in-house under our platform, and created the Sorenson Impact Advisory to really be an intermediary out there to help others to be able to do the same.
So I think this is such a fascinating journey, Jim. When I describe your activities, which I've done multiple times, I talk about this extraordinary investor in Utah who has largely looked for markets where he can serve the underserved and do so profitably, do so in a way which is sustainable. And I think this was largely the promise that many people thought they were getting in different types of markets, the ESG market, the sustainable investment market. There is, Jim, I believe, a huge amount of demand, both ultra high net worth as well as institutional, to do well and do good. The fact that you and your colleagues have, and I'd like to come back to this term concessionary because I don't love it, but been able to beat your 60-40 benchmark while having 100% of your assets also generating some type of impact. What advice do you give to others who say, I want to do that? That sounds like a great strategy. What would you tell them to do, Jim?
Well, I think obviously, you need to find, I'll call them intermediaries, but they're basically wealth managers. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we set up the Sorenson Impact Advisory, because they're 100% devoted to finding those companies or funds that will generate the returns that are market rate in the flavors of impact. So if you're someone that was really on climate, then we're going to focus on finding the climate funds and firms. If you're really focused on education or healthcare or any other sector, there's real work to that in terms of underwriting both the financial returns and the authenticity of the impact, and being able to make recommendations.
Yeah.
So that is really key.
And I think in-house you have a couple of examples of funds you also have open to investors, Enable being one. Could you give brief descriptions of those funds?
Yeah, we made the decision, Terry. We found that there were areas of impact, we'll say sectors, and sectors like financial inclusion, a lot of investments in that, or health tech, access to health, but I made my initial fortune, so to speak, in helping those of disability. Yeah. And there's really aren't investable funds out there that are focused on the 1.5 billion people in this country that have some form of disability, and really amazing investment opportunities, with new technologies that have come out, employing AI, employing GPS, internet. When you start combining these technologies in solutions, there are really amazing companies that help those with disability in many different ways.
Yeah.
And so I found a very educated, well-experienced domain expert in disability that really wanted to found a fund, but didn't have the operational experience. Needed some money to help get it off the ground, and frankly needed help, with the investment expertise. And we had built kind of that skill set here within our platform, and so we were able to combine with her domain expertise and launched Enable Ventures, which is focused on disability. We've done the same in real estate, in I think ways that are differentiated, Terry, from what you see typically in funds that are focused on real estate and affordable housing. And I can get into more detail there, but those are the two funds. Catalyst is the real estate fund, and Enable Ventures is the fund focused on disability. And we'll look at others, as they opportunistically arise in the future.
And so, Jim, we talked a little bit about how you use PRIs, program-related investments, to then perhaps seed some of your other, larger exposures that would be truly income producing. Can you give one or two examples of this PRI, MRI dynamic where you just, this is what allowed you to discover a great opportunity?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And first of all, let me just say that impact investing is a spectrum.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that, Terry, is on the one end, you can provide grant capital that really helps to leverage in investors or de-risk investors, for market rate investors in funds and transactions. An example of that is the Sustainable Development uh, SDG fund that the MacArthur Foundation provided a $25 million loan guarantee for, Terry, off their balance sheet, which then uh, catalyzed 110 million in first loss capital from the Deutsche Development Bank.
Right.
And with that, they were able to go out and raise $1 billion of
A
market
billion.
rate
A
capital.
billion. Yeah. Mm.
$1 billion.
Mm.
So deployed in Africa and in Latin America for sustainable agriculture, sustainable energy, and sustainable communities. Basically, small loans to many that otherwise wouldn't be able to get loans.
Right.
So that's an example
Yeah.
of first philanthropy coming in. Then I would say concessionary in that. Then the Deutsche Development Bank was willing to take the next loss on their 110 million, and then the market rate $1 billion coming in because this had been de-risked to such a point that it was a good investment for them. And that's what we call blended capital or blended finance. And that's the spectrum that I'm referring to.
Yeah.
In the case of program-related investments, we invested in a company called Graduation Alliance. Their business, Terry, was focused on helping high school graduates be able to get high school degrees and jobs. That was their revenue model. They grew from our very early on $250,000 kind of first money in investment to where ultimately they were acquired by KKR, their impact fund. We didn't realize that this had happened, and all of a sudden we were notified because we have a $3 million return on the $250,000 investment, and we have KKR in our. So we continue to own the company, but through KKR.
Yeah.
So around, full circle on that.
Absolute full circle. And it's interesting, Jim, because those investment opportunities might, be visible to someone in your position or MacArthur, but I'd like to pivot a little bit to how you think of one of the dreams you and I have spoken about is mobilizing a lot of capital, both institutional and high net worth. So folks who might want to only put 5, 8, 10% of their portfolio into something that would make a difference. Where should they start, Jim? What should they do? Where do they go?
Well, again, I think it comes down to finding the right intermediary for you to help you go through that journey. Now, Lauren, with our advisor, would sit down with someone like that, and the first thing they would do is she would find out what they really care about. And it may be 3 or 4 things, Terry. And then she would do an analysis to show them, this is really investable right now. There are a lot of opportunities, and that gets a green light. This one is emerging. Investable opportunities, not as many. So, manager selection may be a little bit reduced. You need to be willing to take on a little bit of that. And, this over here, I would wait for a while before you do that.
Yeah.
And essentially develop kind of, I would say, the impact policy statement to begin with. And we all know what investment policy statements are. So this is the impact policy statement that informs then where the investments start. And then from there, it comes down to establishing what the investment policy is in terms of the portfolio composition and allocations, and then it's manager selection. It's down in the trenches, exactly. Finding the best managers and tracking both the financial returns along with the impact returns.
As you know, one of the things we've decided to do at the Impact Evaluation Lab is not try to evaluate funds on whether or not they're top tier or bottom quartile, but rather, are they likely to produce the returns they promised to their LPs, to their investors? We did that very specifically, Jim, because this idea of concessionary, if you have an extraordinary microfinance fund that's returning 8, 9, 10%, but also generating an extraordinary amount of impact, what is the term concessionary strikes us as not useful. Or the forestry funds we've done, or a number of the funds that we've evaluated in real assets, 10, 12, 14% returns. Concessionary doesn't seem to us to be the right way to talk about that. How do you understand the term concessionary when it comes to impact investing?
I think of it quite differently than you do, Terry. First of all, investors have a choice, and they may want to take on more concession in order to
achieve that.
And usually it's in terms of risk. I think most of the funds that we look at that we make investments, we're very early stage, but we have really a high conviction for the need for the theory of change, so to speak, that they're addressing. Mm-hmm. And so that comes from kind of a different pocketbook, that comes from the PRI pocketbook.
Right.
That's not something that Lauren would consider, mm-hmm. because her mandate, Lauren, with the advisory is not concessionary. It's mm-hmm. not. And then where things really get interesting, Terry, is in between. Mm-hmm. And to give you an example, with in between capital, we have Catalyst, which is our real estate fund. They have two classes of investors. Mm-hmm. They have market rate investors that need to generate market returns, risk-adjusted returns. And then they have a class that are what we call impact investors that are willing to take a haircut on return so long as it's deployed really dollar for dollar in reaching their impact objectives.
Exactly.
Now, in this case, it would be, CRA banks, mandates that they have to
Community Reinvestment Act.
Community Reinvestment Act. So they have to deploy a certain amount of money into LMI communities.
Yeah.
And quite often those are measured by, hitting AMI levels of 80% or lower, average median income, in terms of housing. So if their dollars help to write down what otherwise would have been, say, 120% of AMI to 80%, they're meeting that requirement, right, and they're willing to take that return. So when you blend these different sources of capital and align the interests, Terry, of the investors, mm-hmm. You're able to do deals that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. The SDG loan fund is a good example, right, another example of what I'm talking about. Right. And that is really the world that we're in. So it really is up to the investor. And if you have an investor that is willing to take less of a return, Terry, for a very specific desired impact, that's okay.
Right.
If, on the other hand, you have one that really does not want to take any concession, they want full-on market rate returns, yep, that's okay.
Absolutely.
It's a spectrum.
Mm-hmm. As we like to say, capital is king, right? So whoever has the capital is the... Jim, let's pivot a little bit to a topic that's always gotten you and I a little energetic with one another, which is the phenomenon of ESG investing. And I think both of our positions are in the public domain. I would just love you to explain what you think are, as there's been this ESG backlash, what are the 2 or 3 misconceptions about ESG, in your opinion, that you wish you wish you magic wand you could make go away?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is definitional, Terry,
Okay,
and I think uh, ESG has been conflated with SRI being socially
socially responsible.
responsible investing. And I think in the current climate, I'm concerned that it's conflated with impact investing,
Yeah,
and the three are different. And all three of them are still evolving and imperfect, and
that's right.
ultimately could be improved. All three of them could be improved. But socially
Yeah,
responsible investing is essentially negative screening. It's
yeah,
basically, I don't want to own tobacco stocks. I don't want to own oil, or I don't want to. I mean, it's an investor choice,
right,
and I'm willing to take the risk, I suppose, of underperforming because I don't have these in my portfolio.
right.
And there are a number of organizations, a number of investors are socially responsible, and I think it's been around the longest.
Yeah,
ESG is really taking into account risk factors, and these are risk factors that are associated with environmental risks, social risks, and governance risks. And you can be an oil company and be more responsible to the environment as this oil company, or you could be a tobacco company and the same. So in my mind, um, ESG can apply to every company. Um, and, ultimately you want to reduce risks that can improve financial performance and are part of the fiduciary duty
hmm,
that any allocator has in allocating capital for a client.
yeah,
Impact investing is quite a bit different in that the very business that you're investing in, their goods or services, their products are essentially addressing a social good or a problem, or we like to categorize them in the 17 Sustainable Development
right,
Goals
right,
because they're fairly broad categories. And every dollar that's earned is advancing, the impact. So best in class company would be a company that was an impact investment, but also was treating their employees, treating the environment, and had good governance associated with ESG or sustainable investing.
yeah,
ESG as a term has become highly politicized. It's become attacked by special interests, and it's politically charged at this point in time. So when you talk about moving on from ESG, I think it's probably not a bad thing to move on from that term, but certainly sustainable investing, if you want to call that to be the same concept that I've described, is here to stay. And I think it's important that it continue to grow. It's imperfect. It could be improved. There's confusion. There's greenwashing. It's often used incorrectly. The same with impact investing, Terry.
yep, that's right.
And we need firms like IEL that are out, helping us to make the best informed decisions when it comes to authenticity and impact
Hmm.
for the funds and companies that are out there.
Well, as usual, Jim, I didn't disagree with a thing you said, including the IL part, but the idea that, a company can flout issues regarding any of its stakeholders, its employees, its supply chain, its environment, what it's doing in its own community, and still be a high quality company, whether or not ESG is politicized or not, it doesn't matter. Don't do those things. High quality companies do not ignore their stakeholders. Whether or not we need to do that through a regulatory process or through growing corporate shareholder resolutions is an
Yeah, and
interesting.
I think
Yeah,
I would also add, Terry, that ESG or sustainable investing is very much a long-term. I
yeah,
mean,
that's what
these
you said.
things don't show up
Yeah,
just overnight. I use an example, Boeing. We were invested in Boeing, great American company, and I wish them well. But Boeing underwent really cultural changes and decisions at the highest level that were not good for the company and introduced risks as it relates to really the governance side of that business, and it was screened out of our you know
Yep.
our portfolio for
Yep.
those reasons.
Yep.
And then the 737 Max and all of that started unfolding,
Yep.
and you know those things don't show up overnight. That's
Yep.
that could be a decade in the making.
Yeah, I think the whole story there was when the widget people took over from the engineering people. There's a whole Harvard Business School case study of what happened at Boeing. I want to turn, Jim, we don't have much time left, and I want to turn to the ecosystem, the impact investment ecosystem. And you're doing so much for that, not only with the Institute, but with your longstanding support of SOCAP and your participation in a number of these alliances. I'd like, if we could, in our remaining time, Jim, for you to reflect on what you think is needed for the impact investment ecosystem to become such that people investing in these various opportunities that you've just described really become second nature, really become part of a regular investment decision. You're sitting down with your JP Morgan or Citi wealth advisor, your UBS wealth advisor, or you're choosing a fund that's being offered to you by Vanguard, BlackRock, Fidelity, I don't care. How is it that we're going to capture that demand that led investors to put $8 billion a day into ESG funds in 2020? There is a huge desire, Jim, a huge demand for people's capital to do well and do good. How do we create the ecosystem so that's more possible?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, Terry. I think clearly we need more funds. We need more intermediaries like the Sorenson Impact Advisory. We need to encourage entrepreneurs and through investment, through collaborations. We just need to grow that. And I think as we do, we become more efficient. I think we need to improve, the way that we track, measure, and benchmark the impact. We need to make sure that it's authentic and that we're investing in the right places.
Yeah.
And that there's really a true north and rigor to both impact, sustainable, and so forth. And then I believe that we need partnerships. We really need, when I say partnerships, we need to address system change from an impact perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's where we can get large flows of capital. And that involves policymakers, thoughtful, enabling policy, or policy that helps to leverage in investment in this way. And you and I've written an article on 3 different policies around wealth building in that regard. We need investors to the table. Philanthropies certainly have a role, we need the communities also involved. And I think if we can really build strong partnerships and collaborate and align the interests, that we're able to leverage in much greater capital to deploy for impact investing.
Yeah. Well, as you know, we're also at IL taking on that challenge with regulatory agencies directly. So conversations with the SEC, conversations with people on the Hill on how it is that we can come to a point where impact clicks all the fiduciary boxes. We're all fiduciaries. You've said it many times. People should be able to do what they want with their capital, whether or not it's exclusions, whether or not it's concessionary, whether or not that's pure impact, or whether or not it's return seeking. Let's give people the information they need to be able to make those types of decisions with confidence. I'd like to be able to give you an opportunity, Jim, to say anything else you'd like to say about the foundation or the Institute. We're very excited about the work that we do with the Institute. As you know, they've been very important to us, and the opportunities you're giving students. What else would you like to share about what your vision has been and the good works of both the Institute and the foundation that you would like our listeners to know about?
Well, I would just say this, that, I think some have said that we've got real headwinds right now in the political environment that we're in. Although I have not seen that as much in terms of certainly an enthusiasm, particularly from the next generation, and that's the future. And we have a huge wealth transfer, Terry, huge wealth transfer that's going to be occurring with the next generation and women. And if you survey those people, and there have been a number of surveys, impact and values oriented, investing is really high priority for them. So I think the future is bright, and I've told others that I believe the best is yet to come.
I've been on this stage with you where I've said it's 1977 in impact investing, because then Sequoia was 5 years old and nobody knew what venture capital was. And our hope, our shared dream with you, Jim, and your colleagues, is that it will become just as easy to pick a fund that creates more low-income housing, or takes carbon out of the air, or plastic out of the oceans, or supports indigenous tribes, or helps female entrepreneurs achieve, that it's just so easy to know what your options are because they've been properly vetted. That's a world that, with your support, as you know, we're working on building here at IEL. So grateful, Jim, for your time. So
Thank you, Terry.
So grateful for all you do. We're with you in the fight.
Thank you, Terry. And we're rooting for you, and we love what you're trying to do. It's needed. And I'm looking forward to the next chapter.
So, Jim, we just actually got to see each other, I think, a half a dozen times last week during Climate Week. A number of events that we did together that were so special. Any insights or special moments for you from Climate Week that you want to share with our guests?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this relates somewhat to the optimistic view I have, Terry, of the future, even with some of the headwinds that I spoke about. Mm-hmm. I've been attending the Forbes Philanthropy Summit. This is a summit for essentially the top, philanthropic organizations in the country for about 13 years. And it was originally founded by essentially the Giving Pledge and the beginning Giving
Gates
Pledge
and
members. Mm-hmm. And I remember at the time, very early on, I posed a question to one of the largest wealth holders in the group there, what he thought about impact investing. And he said, well, I make my money on one hand and I give it away on the other hand, and I don't mix the two. And so I thought, well, I've got my work to do. And I was really delighted this year that they renamed the summit. It was the Forbes Philanthropy Summit. This year, it's the Forbes Impact Summit. So times are changing, and it's great to be a part of it.
Well, Jim, times are changing in no small part to the actions that you've been taking for years. I've enjoyed, it's a privileged ticket, not everyone gets one, but enjoying, the Sorenson Impact Summit that you do every year, which is really, so many people have become my friends at that event, but also SoCap, Jin, I'll see you in Berlin, I think, in a week. The ecosystem is growing in no small part because of work that you've done and investments that you've made. So I think we all owe you a debt of gratitude. You and Luke and all your kids and all your grandkids, and Krista, of course, for making the world a better place. Do well, do good. Doesn't need to be concessionary.
Thank you.